here. So I'm sick of hearing there's no vote fraud. There's a lot of vote fraud. Maybe Trump shouldn't be talking about it.
Rather than me ask the question, I'll let Cenk respond. Cenk, go ahead.
In this one, Ann Coulter goes toe-to-toe with Cenk Uygur, old chunky yogurt from TYT, on the Dan Abrams show over Donald Trump's rhetoric as it relates to the 2020 election. Now let's check it out.
They've already started cheating in Lancaster. They've cheated. We caught them with 2,600 votes. No, we caught them cold. 2,600 votes. Think of this. Think of this. And every vote was written by the same person. I wonder how that happened. It must be a coincidence. It must be a coincidence.
Again, not only did he not catch them, right? It was the Pennsylvania officials who came forward. And these aren't votes. These weren't ballots. These were ballot applications. And now, as they've investigated them, more than half already were determined to be valid. They're continuing to investigate them. I mean, Ann, this to me is the most dangerous stuff that Trump is saying, which is claiming that this particular election is already being stolen.
I think, yeah, I think it's stupid. It's politically stupid. It's not going to help him. I basically agree with you, but for the sake of argument, I do have one little point I'd like to make about this, and that is, okay, Trump shouldn't be saying it, but let's say somebody else is saying it. Say I'm saying it. I'm sick of hearing all the time that there is no vote fraud, absolutely no vote fraud. Dan, nobody's looking for the vote fraud. Did you hear about the non-citizen Chinese student at University of Michigan who voted last week? And, oh, his vote will count because you can't get it back now. Right. You know how they caught him like they're looking for him? For some reason, he went back the next day and he asked for his ballot back. Yeah. So unless you vote illegally, you're not a citizen, unless you go and ask for the so it's like asking, you know, Confederate sheriffs, are you letting black people vote? Yeah, well, we can't find any vote fraud here. Well, you're not looking. And they're not looking here, so I'm sick of hearing there's no vote fraud. There's a lot of vote fraud. Maybe Trump shouldn't be talking about it.
Rather than me ask the question, I'll let Cenk respond. Cenk, go ahead.
Yeah, I was getting worried about all the agreement here. Thank you, Ann, for bringing up something that's wrong. Heritage Foundation, very right-wing think tank, the guys who did Project 2025, looked into voter fraud over a period of, I think, about 20 years. And they did find it. They found 0.00006% of the vote was fraudulent. So, meaning it is totally statistically insignificant. It's the kind of desperate things that losing candidates do. The only upside here, Dan, is that once I started hearing them cry about how the election was rigged, I was like, oh, I guess their internal polling shows that they're about to lose. So that's what a losing candidate does. And you're absolutely right. First of all, they caught it. So what kind of grand scheme is it when you catch all the people who are doing the fraud? So that doesn't make any sense at all, but it's Trump. He doesn't have to make sense. But overall, here's what you're not going to do if you think you're going to crush in this election. Complain that it's rigged.
But Ann, the idea that they aren't looking, I mean, they are absolutely looking. I mean, a lot of these states are actively, they're very proud of the fact, you know, you listen to the former Secretary of State of Arizona, right? He'll tell you that in 2020, he was looking for fraud. He was looking for it again and again, and he couldn't find it. So this notion that they're not looking for it, I don't know.
Well, okay. Well, this is done state by state, and in the state of Michigan, all you need is a utility bill to vote. And I just described a case to you that they did not catch until the guy came back and asked for his ballot back. So it's done state by state. I'm sure they're looking for it in some states, but liberals have really got to stop saying there's no evidence. There's no evidence. No one's looking for it.
Yeah, no, I
think there should be one day to vote, and man, there should be voter ID.
Look, but I agree with you that there should be voter ID. I agree with you that there has been voter fraud, but there's nothing to suggest it's changing any outcomes. There's nothing to suggest that it's overturning any elections. And this is why, you know, when AP went back a year later and looked at every single one of the claims of voter fraud, every one, and they looked at what would happen, what was the prosecution, et cetera. I mean, I had the Secretary of State of Georgia on, again, a Republican, Brad Raffensperger. I said to him, look, AP says you had 64 cases, and he said, well, in the end, it was actually 25. But they all are very familiar with exactly how many. And I just think of all these things, this Liz Cheney nonsense, this nonsense about he was trying to shoot the media. These are just headlines that the left-leaning media wants to focus on because, dictator for a day, all this nonsense that actually doesn't go to anything real. But this is real stuff.
So that started out with Dan Abrams claiming that it wasn't actual ballots, it was ballot applications. But I can't figure out what a ballot application is and how it doesn't relate to an actual ballot being potentially cast, right? If you caught something, because the only thing that I can come up with is that it refers to something that has to do with the mail-in ballot. So in my mind, if they're requesting a mail-in ballot, if that's what the ballot application is, they were intending on voting. So stopping it ahead of time doesn't necessarily reflect the outcome, but it does signal an attempted cheat of sorts, right? But it does signal potential malice of some sorts. At least it does in my opinion, right? So it's kind of a cop-out when he says we don't see it actually being reflected in the election. Well, it's because they got caught on the front end. And that's thankfully what the RNC, led by Laura Trump, was really on top of this time. She had, from what I understand, it was like nearly 250,000 poll watchers, which that always cracks me up saying poll watchers, but they had nearly 250,000 poll watchers in the swing states with a bunch of attorneys basically waiting on call to address any potential things that came up that would actually prevent a person from voting. And from some of the reports that I saw, there was a gas leak and there was some threats and some other things like that essentially closed down some polling places for a couple hours. And that team that she put together was able to extend the voting period for the amount of time, like say if it was down for 2 hours, they were able to get 2 hours added onto the closing time for those polling locations. So everybody still got a fair chance to vote at the place that they were at. They might have had to take more time out of their day to do it, and thankfully they did, because we got Donald Trump elected, and that was something that the country desperately needed. And so thank you to all those people who stayed in line, that cast their vote for Donald Trump and for the red, basically down ticket so that we could win the Senate and the House. And that's just the beginning. Now that we got these folks elected, we need to hold their feet to the fire and start racking up the wins for the American citizens, right? Not be satisfied ever until they're out of office, until the job is done or they're out of office, and then we'll move on to holding the next person's feet to the fire. Never become complacent, because it's important that we don't let these people become comfortable and start taking their vacations and, start serving their own self-interest. That's something that we definitely don't want. But how funny is it that Cenk Uygur comes out here and tries to say it's 0.000006, which I thought he was going to say 1. That kind of threw me off when he said 6 there. And maybe it lends a little bit of credibility to what he was saying, since it wasn't as predictable. But I don't know. It doesn't matter. The fact is, people were trying to cheat, especially when you look at the numbers from this election versus the numbers of last election, and then the numbers from the 2 previous elections. The 2021 was a complete outlier. Typically in math, you throw out the outlier. But as it relates to an election, we should try to understand what went wrong or what was different with that one and correct it, because it was definitely something going on where nearly 20 million people voted. There was nearly 20 million extra votes, I should say, as it relates to the 2 previous and this one itself, the one that we just had. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you to everyone who went out there and voted for Donald Trump. Thank you for everyone who's prayed for our country to use the evil things and turn them around for good. And I don't really have anything else, so I guess I'll just see you guys in the next video.